And I have to admit, selfishly, I got a very powerful description of why I do what I do every day. I mean, literally, I wouldn't have defined the problem the way you define the problem, but I'm talking about the same problem. I wouldn't have defined the solution the way you define the solution, but that's what I do every day. I mean, literally. I mean, I guess an important difference for us is like we're very focused on story, and it's really about meaning shared. We do these gatherings all over the place, and relatively unscientifically, I can tell you that 90% of the people, when they have that opportunity to share meaning, they love each other. And I use that word specifically. I believe in that word. Sounds corny and loose, but it's real. And ultimately, you're talking about a very similar kind of thing. If I have a fear, if I were going to define my fear, and I say fear because I want you to win. One is the bummer. And I say it's a bummer because I think I used to not believe this was the case, is that even with creative projects, the winner works the hardest. Like the winner just busts his or her ass and redoes it 5,000 times until it's good. And that element of this idea I think is huge, which is to say there's going to be a Steven Spielberg of even what you do. Even if it's the way the gizmo looks, even if it's the way the interface works with the way the story sort of winds its way in, or when you start to think about a movement, it's critically an emotional thing. And that storytelling thing being so critical, if there's something I would be afraid of, one of them is, I love the idea of the 5-year thing. I just don't know if that holds what I would hope it would hold. And then the second part is, I'm not sure not-for-profit attracts the kind of killers you need. And that may be a pessimistic, cynical view, but I think there are people who more and more can hold both things. I mean, think about like great musicians. Think of the Grateful Dead. Ironically, they were capitalists. Now, they weren't capitalists first, but they didn't do it not for profit. There's a freedom there. There's a risk there that I think creates something that's just different. This is my own philosophy. I know I'm not 100% right on this, but I think there's this interesting for-profit, not-for-profit thing that's hitting a new place, and that part makes me anxious. But anyway, okay, so those were I spent time talking about my fears and criticisms, but I'm talking about the little part at the end as opposed to everything I heard before. And I love it. And listen, I think it's I think to be passionate again in this country about education, because unfortunately it's been about money. We keep talking about money, and we keep saying it's about debt, and we keep saying it's about higher ed. My view is it's different ed. Higher, I don't even how are you going to draw that line? And what's it really about? What is learning about a job? Is that really what it's about? Now, I know that's an important piece of the puzzle. I don't want to diminish that. But what you're talking about is nobler. I mean, it just is. And so how do we celebrate that as a culture again? Because we don't celebrate it that much. Like the notion of what a liberal arts education is, or what it should be. I say should. What I think it could be. Man, I'm not sure we even jump up and down about that anymore. I don't know. I don't hear it very often.
I really like that you use the word noble, because it's there was a thing before democracy, called the nobility, as one governance system of some people who, for whatever reason, were developed or believed to intrinsically have, but largely developed the capacity for good judgment and decision making that involved nobility, not just cognitive capacities, and nobility moving from being a class of people to being a distributed characteristic, right, is one of the core essences of the democratic republic ideal. And the idea of democracy as we all have a say, it's participatory governance, we all have a say in what happens. So there was this idea that the internet would democratize access to information. Everybody could have access to information. But when there's a billion search results on anything, access to information is utterly useless. Information processing is the key. And there is not a democratization of information processing. You have groups that have access to massive big data analysis and private and public intelligence, and most everyone else who only has access to narrative warfare aimed at them. And so if you want to have anything like a democracy, you actually have to have democratization of information processing. What we're trying to do is to be able to provide information that is the quality and nature of information that the top level institutional decision makers currently get to everyone, because the idea of a decision maker is an anti-democratic idea. This is why it's a nonprofit, is we will not put it behind a paywall, is because it will be fully available with no manipulation, won't require an email or anything for everybody. Now, if people want to make for-profit news institutions as part of the movement, awesome. We want people to make for-profit private intelligence companies and news organizations and whatever, as well as nonprofit ones. But the stewarding group that is stewarding the information commons must have no other master here in this particular way of doing it, which is just, our goal is to both steward the information commons and to get that to become a recognized thing where it becomes decentrally stewarded by lots of different groups and kind of as a cultural value, and then to not have any other reason to exist.
Oh, okay, I mean, that's fair, but there's some master to that money as well.
When people donate, they can try and have strings attached. And this is where great founder hypothesis is important. Apple post Jobs isn't the same, and Musk Industries post Musk is probably not going to be the same. And so institutional decay oftentimes starts to occur when the founder that was or the founding group that was motivated by the thing is gone, and they didn't pass on that process, that generator function of the wisdom well enough. So you get generational decay. This project is not going to last long enough for that to matter here. The generational decay issue is a real issue, but as a founding team focused here, we've had times where people wanted to give money with strings attached, and we just told them to fuck themselves. And because we know what we're actually committed for.
Yeah.
And the same is true with people who would work in the organization if they can, have, this is why like also no names associated, is there's actually, okay, the nobility part.
I like that.
There's actually a noble imperative that is deeper than the capital imperative. And it can be tapped into earnestly. Now, it's been manipulated so much, you have a whole kind of cynical population where there was no experience of real virtue, only virtue signaling. But real virtue is actually a thing. And the ennoblement here is the idea that everyone could be possibly a meaningful decision maker and contributor to society, and we want them all to have access to the best information anyone has access to. There's an ennoblement of what we think about the value of the mind. And this is a key thing. Not only do I not want to manipulate what someone does, who they vote for, or what they believe on something, I want to give them better ability to make sense of it. I want to inoculate them against anyone being able to manipulate them effectively moving forward, right? We want to help them increase their sovereignty and increase their communication with other people so that collective intelligence, individual and collective intelligence, is actually a thing. That's the actual thing that we believe in as a basis for change across lots of different vectors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the spirit of it, and I mean this sincerely. I mean this very sincerely. I don't fully understand that, but I want to, and I respect what you're saying. I really do. I'm not trying to be cute at all, and part of it is because of my own experience in the for versus not-for-profit realm. And then just sort of the battle of ideas, because it just, in essence, it just becomes, I've seen some of the most competitive people I've ever seen in my life are people running not-for-profits who make, decisions based on personal foibles and things in ways that are just so destructive, and then there's also this kind of, there can be this sort of elitist view that permeates the place based on other things. And we don't need to talk about that right now. But anyway, I'm saying this because I care, and I think
these are reasonable and good considerations, and we've went over hundreds of them, internally, like possible strategic considerations with a very good advisory group, and we'll continue to, and we'll pivot strategically to what serves best as we really learn what serves best. The clarity of what the actual mission and vision is clear. Is how do we actually support an increasing integrity in the information and epistemic commons, and how do we increase a shared cultural value towards not just group virtue signaling and outrage and whatever, but high quality sense making and high good faith dialogue as the prerequisites of our ability to do any of the problem solving that we really care about. Yeah. And you know, the kind of conversations about these things, would be happy to have them on or offline at some point.